And welcome back to State of the Union. I'm Gloria Borger.
And I'm Dana Bash. Candy Crowley is off. We're continuing to discuss the situation in Iraq, and with us now is retired Army Major General Paul Eaton. He was the U.S. commander in charge of training and equipping Iraqi forces. And General, I just want to put up on the screen another stark number, $20 billion. That's what the U.S. Spent to train Iraqi security forces.
Probably a conservative figure, too.
In a conservative figure, wow. And I'm sure you've seen the images of what's happening now. Correct. Since you've left, and that is uniforms on the ground. These Army individuals who you trained, they're running away.
That's actually what we found when we first went into the military bases in 2003. We found uniforms on the ground. And then we go into the development of the Iraqi soldier, or the Iraqi units, and trying to infuse that sense of legitimacy in the soldier that will cause soldiers to do great things. And if you don't have that sense of legitimacy, if that soldier does not believe that he is a legitimate actor on behalf of a legitimate government executing a legitimate mission, then you're going to have what we see today.
Now, I know you blame the Prime Minister for this in a great deal. Because,
a great deal, yes.
Because he hasn't instilled that loyalty.
He has disenfranchised the Sunni population, and he has created this drama that we're dealing with right now, and he's done it since December 2011 when we left. He has not had that guiding hand of Ambassador Crocker and our military. And
you just heard Lindsey Graham, though. He said airstrikes. You don't think airstrikes are going to work?
Airstrikes are a problem unless you have execution-level detail intelligence, and the fact that ISIS, you got to catch these guys when they're alone out in the open. They tend to hug the indigenous population. They tend to hug the people who are living in
They're embedded
Iraq.
In the population.
And the optic, yes, the optic of bombs landing on friendly Arabs is a very bad optic for the United States. So we have to have actionable intelligence, and we get that by putting advisors on the ground, which I believe is the least bad option available to the United States right now.
So stay with us for a moment. We want to go back to Baghdad, to our Nick Robertson there. And let me just ask you to get into this conversation, Nick, because we're talking about what's occurred since the U.S. troops have left and Iraq has been immersed in violence. How bad is the situation right now, Nick? I mean, ISIS getting closer to Baghdad. I mean, do you see from your vantage point that there's a way to avoid collateral damage if there are airstrikes?
It's potentially very tough. I mean, ISIS certainly is aligning itself with the civilian populations, hugging the civilian terrain, as we were just saying there. So it is difficult, and it's difficult politically as well, because if you're trying to promote political dialogue, when you start shelling one side, the Sunnis, because we'll be aiming at ISIS, and if there is any collateral damage among the Sunni population, or regardless, the Sunni tribesmen in the west of Iraq here who fought with the U.S. Marines to crush al-Qaeda back in 2006, 2007, who are now on the side of ISIS because they want political change, not a caliphate, they would feel that the United States is targeting them. I was talking with a tribal leader who told me precisely that. He wants to get into talks with U.S. officials because he wants to mitigate against that kind of thing happening. But the reality is, if you have airstrikes and there is collateral damage, you are taking a side in the views of one of the parties, taking a side in the conflict, and that's going to make getting a political deal so much harder.
Nick, we want to go back to the general, but in the break, I just have to tell our viewers, you were telling us a story about something that really is illustrative and an unfortunate anecdote about how hard it is there right now.
It is, and I was listening to the discussion with Senator Graham there about the cost in lives to U.S. servicemen and the blood loss. There is, on the roof of this building, a few feet from me, a headstone for an American soldier, 23 years old, Michael James Stokely. His father came here to Iraq, wanted to place that headstone at the place where his son died in Baghdad, just a few miles from here in 2005. The stone has been sat here on the roof for the past year or so because it is still too dangerous to go and lay the stone where his son gave up his life for this country and for peace and stability. Still too dangerous. This, and I'm sure there are many other cases like this, it is very telling and a very sombering thought.
Wow, Nick, I mean, what a story. And in general, I'm sitting here watching you listen to that. Somebody who spent so much time, so much effort trying to change things, and you left thinking that things were much better.
This is tragic, watching what is unfolding right now, but we can get it back. We can take this back. We can help the Iraqis stiffen their defense of Baghdad. We can establish Fortress Baghdad, from which we can sally forth and retake the terrain that we've lost to this group, this ISIS group. They're not huge. The Iraqi army outnumbers them, outguns them, and can outlead them. What we need to do is stiffen the spine of the Iraqi military, and we do that by putting senior advisors on the ground to help the Iraqis to link into the intelligence systems that we can provide them, logistic systems that we can provide them, and yes, the air power that we can provide if we can get actionable intelligence.
Thanks so much, General Eaton. That sounds like an awful lot to do in a very short period of time.
We have allies. We have a natural ally in Iran. We have a natural ally in the Peshmerga with the Kurds.
Thank you very much, General Eaton.
Thank you very much. And when we come back, we're actually going to talk to two others who served in the war, and there's real passion behind their thinking because they're not just veterans, but they're actually now representatives in the House, and they disagree in many ways on how to proceed.
They're good friends too. So
they sure are. And you will hear from the two of them when we come back. Joining us now are two members of Congress who are also Iraq War veterans. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat from Hawaii. She served 12 months in Iraq and is now a military police captain in the National Guard. And Congressman Adam Kinzinger, Republican from Illinois, a military pilot and major in the Air National Guard. And he's flown missions both in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Now, both of them are on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I should tell you as well. I want to get to you, Congresswoman Gabbard, first. Established that you all disagree on what to do now. You are opposed to going into airstrikes, but I just want to ask you, as you answer that and explain why, also talk on a more personal level, human level, about what it feels like to see what's going on there, given your service there.
Yeah, during my first deployment there to Iraq in 2005, I worked in a medical unit and really on a daily basis saw firsthand the incredible, huge and ugly cost of war and the toll and the price that our troops paid on a daily basis. You talked earlier about the numbers who were killed as well as those who were injured there. Those friends of mine who spent time training the Iraqi troops, it's painful to see their hard work and watching the Iraqi troops literally shed their uniforms. And this is one of my major concerns about those who are advocating for airstrikes and getting our U.S. military back involved in really, truly what is a religious civil war. Your last guest talked about stiffening the spine of the Iraqi troops, increasing their feeling of legitimacy. You can't train away the core issue here, which is that you have a Sunni versus Shia battle going on. You have Sunni commanders literally saying Sunni soldiers will be defecting because of their displeasure with the Shia-led government.
Well, let me ask Congressman Kinzinger about that. Your colleague and friend says it's a civil war. I know that you must feel the pain at the thought of going back there in any way, shape, or form, and yet you say airstrikes might be the answer.
Right.
How does this make you feel on a personal level when you're talking about U.S. involvement again?
Well, on a personal level, this feels terrible. I mean, the base I was stationed at is either surrounded or taken over by now in Balad Air Base. And, I imagine when I was there at night sleeping and, you'd get attacked by mortars, but you never felt like anybody was going to come in the fence. It was secure. It's not like that anymore. And it's very tragic. On the issue of airstrikes, look, is this going to be the answer? I don't think this is necessarily the panacea. But to watch back, we are watching right now the worst case scenario happen. This is the worst case scenario. So I think the United States military is not some weak animal that needs nurturing now. We are very fierce and very good at what we do, and we have got to get in there, work with a political solution with Iraq, but push back this very evil organization, ISIS, and give some breathing space for the Iraqi government to do what it needs to do and reform or whatever needs to happen. But look, this isn't new. This started a number of months ago, and we're acting like we were caught off on surprise. This has been in action for a very long time.
Congresswoman Gabbard, what about I know you say that there's a sectarian war. The U.S. doesn't really have a place to go back now, but what about U.S. national security interests? I mean, isn't what Congressman Kinzinger is saying and what Senator Graham said before, don't they have a point that there's some danger there and there could be, in the words of Senator Graham, another 9/11 brewing there?
Yeah, well, first of all, I do agree with Adam. We do have the fiercest, strongest military in the world. We also have a responsibility to be very careful about how and where we use that military force so that it achieves the objective of what is in the best U.S. interest. It is not in our U.S. interest to go and involve ourselves in the middle of what is a religious civil war. Are there specific security threats to the United States coming from terrorist factions? Yes, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in many other countries in the world. We have to focus our resources that we have, focus our great military on those direct and imminent threats rather than getting distracted by involving ourselves in another civil war that's occurring in another country between religious factions that have been warring for generations.
Congressman Kinzinger,
let me just say...
Go ahead.
I just want to say to that, I mean, if the establishment of a caliphate by an organization that makes Al-Qaeda look like a bunch of kitty cats is not in U.S. national interest to stop it, I don't know what is. And the issue of the Civil War, yeah, there are some real tough sectarian issues going on in Syria and Iraq, but this is the same argument that we heard when it came to the surge. Everybody said, well, we can't do the surge in Iraq because this is just a sectarian civil war. And we saw great success with the surge despite some people's attempt to redefine the surge as a failure. We had the war won.
But Congressman, what do you say to your constituents who are so war-weary? You know, 2/3 of the American public believes it was a mistake to have been in Iraq, that we got nothing out of it. Now we're talking about going back. What do you say to them?
Well, look, the American people have a right to be war-weary. American leadership does not. Leadership is about doing the right thing, even if it's tough. I'm glad that Truman at the end of World War II didn't say, America's too war-weary, we can't leave a residual force in Europe, because Russia would be twice as big as it is today. The point of leadership is leading a war-weary public to the point of saying, this is in national interest, we have to do it. Not standing in front of people and saying, I know you're tired, I know you're tired. It's standing in front of people and saying, I know you're tired, but we have to prevent a caliphate by ISIS from being established.
Congressman Kinzinger, Congresswoman, go ahead, real fast.
Taking that action, taking military action, conducting airstrikes, dropping bombs based on poor intelligence without having real-time intelligence and boots on the ground that can provide that, taking sides in this religious civil war not only is not in the best U.S. national interest, it doesn't even solve the problem of what is existing there. If we want to take action, we should push for brokering. We should push for brokering a peaceful agreement between these warring factions within the country and support leadership in Iraq that's willing to do that.
All right.
ISIS doesn't negotiate, they kill.
Congresswoman, Congressman, thank you very much. Obviously, the fact that you disagree so vehemently and you are, we should say, friends and obviously had similar experiences in Iraq is very telling. We want you to stick around, though, because we want to change subjects dramatically and talk a little bit of politics with our politicians, so stay with us.
And they'll disagree on that, too.
Yes.